Well, Americans are now riveted with the plight of the hostages that have been held by Hamas. Americans Judith Rana and her 17-year-old daughter Natalie were captured by Hamas in Israel, along with roughly 200 others who are still being held. The mother and daughter were released. President Biden spoke with them by phone.
Just to let we're able to get you out. We've been working on it a long time. We're gonna get them all out, God willing. I just want to say, I hope you're both not only feeling good, but in good health as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, we are. Thank you very much. God bless you.
But more than 10 Americans are still thought to be among those being held by the terrorist group Hamas. Meanwhile, Republicans remain paralyzed on the Hill as they cannot agree on a House Speaker. The GOP conference meets on Monday, and several members have now put their hat in the ring. We want to bring in our political panel this morning. Returning to the program after a long absence, Niall Stanage is a White House columnist and associate editor of The Hill, the eponymous of this program. And joining us for the first time, Stephanie Lai is a national politics reporter with Bloomberg. Welcome to the program. Good to see you again. Before we go on to the House Speaker situation right now, I want to talk about Israel. And the president this past week laid out a package of aid that he wants to go not only to Israel, but also to Ukraine. Is this stalemate on the Hill going to make this possible, Steph?
I mean, that's a great question. I think in a lot of ways, the House Republicans have to worry about a number of issues. One is picking a speaker. Two is averting a government shutdown in the next 26 days. And on top of that is the supplemental aid. So whether or not they can get their candidate selected by Monday and bring it to the House floor is another question.
There's been this conversation that perhaps the House could empower the Speaker pro tem right now, Patrick McHenry, to at least operate the House until they can figure this out. McHenry himself really seems to have no appetite on that. So is that a non-starter at this point now?
I think it really is at this point. That was floated, as you know, this past week, and there were just too many Republicans who didn't really want to go for it. And of course, all of this is complicated, as Stephanie alluded to, by virtue of the fact that the math is just so tight. Republicans can barely afford to lose any votes at all, and no candidate has emerged who can keep them all together, and no proposal for like a pro temp speaker expanded powers has done that.
Okay, so when you are listening to these members, they tend to say one thing when they're on microphone, and they tend to say other things when they're not on microphone. What are they saying not on microphone? Because that might get to the heart of how they might be able to resolve this. Do they just hate each other in that conference, or are they just still trying to figure this out?
I mean, I think a lot of people are frustrated right now. Among the members that I've spoken to, it seems like there are three general criteria that they're looking for the next speaker, which tends to be a backbencher. But one is that they don't want someone in current leadership, they don't want someone who wants to be in leadership, and they don't want someone who wants to be in leadership after this Congress.
But we're hearing these stories of these closed-door caucus meetings where they're screaming at each other.
Right.
Apparently, Kevin McCarthy reportedly told Matt Gaetz to shut up and sit down at one point this week. Is the personal animosity the thing that's driving this right now, or is there a philosophical debate over where this party goes?
I think the personal animosity, honestly, is a lot of this, because there's been this whole carnival of chaos, the ousting of McCarthy, Steve Scalise wins an internal vote, then the Jordan loyalists say they're not voting for Scalise, then it becomes Jim Jordan, and then the Steve Scalise people are all in their feelings saying we're not going to vote for him. So there's just enormous personal enmity just sort of percolating all the way through right now, and it is a big problem.
And they're stuck in this mess of their own making in large part. We are hearing that there are candidates stepping forward now. Shannon Bream was just on. We're talking that they had till noon today to actually announce if they're going to. Tom Emmer, who is in leadership, is one of these names that have stepped forward. And a lot of people have said, well, maybe Emmer is the way out of this. Apparently, Donald Trump has made it very clear that Emmer is not to his liking. Could that actually help Emmer, though, if Jim Jordan was somebody that Trump endorsed and he didn't get very far? Is having a Trump endorsement actually maybe a boost right now in this situation?
That's an interesting point, and I think in some ways we saw that the pressure campaign that Trump's loyalists had embarked on these holdouts really backfired on them. But whether or not this impacts Emmer's bid is another question. Of course, with a 5-vote margin, convincing even 5 hardliners would derail Emmer's bid.
And, one of the things that, you got to remember is the way Kevin McCarthy got that job was because he agreed to what ultimately doomed his speakership was the ability of one member saying vacate the chair. Would that remain in place? Because who would want this job if Matt Gaetz or any other member of that caucus could simply raise their hand one day and kick you out of the chair?
We're certainly seeing a push to remove that particular provision. There are a lot of Republican members who are very unhappy about it for exactly the reason that you say. It is essentially giving a political hostage to the hard right or to moderates. Remember, there are 18 members representing districts that were carried by President Biden in 2020. If you had a very hard right speaker, those guys, one of them could call for a motion to vacate. That, I think, is seen by many Republicans just as a recipe for instability and dysfunction.
Now, there is a third rail option here, though, and that is, we see this in a lot of other countries, coalition governments. It's not that unusual in other countries that, different members of different political parties would join together and form a government. Is that a realistic conversation? Now, a couple of weeks ago when this first started, everybody kind of dismissed that out of hand. But if this drags on, and remember, it's November 17th before we have to pass another continuing resolution to keep the government open, could there be a coalition of maybe moderate Republicans who say to the Democrats, maybe we have to work together and choose a speaker?
I mean, that's something that Democrats have been thinking about for a long time now. But the reality is it looks quite bad for these members to side with Democrats instead of unifying the party and coming together to find a consensus candidate. So the likely option is they'll continue to drag this out until they can find a Republican member that they can all agree on.
From the White House standpoint now, how do they view this? Obviously, it's a different branch of government. But, the president has some priorities that he thinks right now have to get done. They're watching this up on Pennsylvania Avenue. They don't have any ability to influence the GOP caucus, so what do they do in this situation?
It's very difficult to determine what they do. I think they view it through a policy lens where it's a problem and a political lens where they see a potential benefit to them. Policy-wise, it just creates this logjam. Politically, it feeds into the president's argument that the GOP doesn't have the capacity to govern and is riven by infighting and just can't be trusted.
Boy, couldn't come at a worse time right now. There are a lot of things going on. Stephanie Lai from Bloomberg, we appreciate you joining us. Niall Stanage, always good to have you back on the program.